Hello, social workers, mental health professionals, and change agents. Welcome to another episode of the Social Work Rants podcast. I'm your host, Bas Moreno. Saludos a todos. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. I appreciate all the love and support. Gracias a todos por su apoyo. You could make sure you follow the podcast on all social media platforms, Instagram at the Social Work Rants podcast. That's all one word. Twitter at Social Work Rants, and hit the like button on Facebook, aka Meta. Type in the Social Work Rants podcast, hit that like button, and YouTube, hit the red subscribe button. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in on all audio platforms. Rate the podcast, leave comments, and let's interact on all these platforms. So, as of this recording, it's still social work month. I say all day, every day, 365, leap year 366 is is social work month, week, day, because we do a lot in these streets. We are the unsung heroes of our communities, whether and society needs to give us our damn respect. So we out here put in this work. So um and again, make sure y'all follow, because I'll continue to rant all about how society need to give us our respect. So and then if you guys want to get on the podcast, email me at bassityentertainmentllc@gmail.com, or DM me on Instagram, and we will get you uh, situated and scheduled. This episode is brought to you by Herd Technologies Incorporated. If you still haven't filed your taxes yet, and you in private practice, Herd is a great way to help save you some money. If you have payroll in your private practice, you have staff, they are a great way to help with your payroll. That way you could focus on seeing your clients, and do your progress notes and the treatment plans and all that good stuff in private practice. So go to joinher.com for more information. Um, Herd is up and coming company doing great things for practitioners and social workers who have a private practice or looking to open up a private practice. So, two ladies who I had the pleasure of meeting and talking to, and doing great things with their brand that we're going to talk about, and just overall social work. Leanna and Janelle, how you ladies doing?
Yes, yes. Hey.
Good.
Oh, we're excited to be here, talk about all things social work and people putting
Yeah.
us on the brand and the name and social workers as a whole. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to have the both of you. Um, Janelle, we're gonna start with you real quick. Let the people know who you are, what you do in our exciting, challenging field of social work.
Yeah. Well, I'm Janelle. Um, I am one half of I'm social work. And currently in the social work field, I actually just started a new position as a medical social worker for a hospice company. So that's a new endeavor for me that I started this week. So training so far has been good. This is definitely going to be a challenge, but I think a rewarding one nonetheless. Hospice is such a, as most different areas of social work are, such a field that has like a really unique needs.
Mm,
And so I'm just looking forward to, learning about that and meeting with patients and helping their families through a challenging time, such as end of life. So,
right. Absolutely, and it's like, death is still such a taboo topic,
right.
and
And it's
especially
something that affects us all,
yes,
everyone.
we all gonna die one of these days. Hopefully, we live a
Mhm.
long, satisfying life, but it's definitely something that we need to talk about. Leanna, let's go to you. What you do in our exciting field of social work?
Yes, yes. So right now, so I've done a lot in the field of social work, been in the field for about 10 years. I don't want to run down the whole resume, but been the child welfare piece. I did was a therapist for some time and did a lot of different things in social work. And so now I would say I'm probably not in the quote unquote traditional sector of social work. I founded a nonprofit 3 years ago. So it is a youth development initiative for middle and high school young people. And I took a leap of faith about a year ago, left my stable job in the social work space to really pursue this nonprofit thing full time. So that is what I do day to day outside of our brand.
That's amazing. Where's the nonprofit located at?
So we're based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So yeah, we're still fairly new. We've been in existence for about 3 years now, but based out of Charlotte. Our goal is to grow, be in various areas, but right now we're keeping it pretty local.
All right, cool. What's the name of the nonprofit?
It is called Exposure Project. Exposure Project. So again, youth development initiative, middle high school young people, focusing on two things. So one is character development, and the other is career exploration. But from a very much hands-on approach, we focus heavily on experiential learning. So allowing our kids to have that firsthand experience of careers through creative ways.
And
it's an amazing nonprofit. Amazing. She's doing amazing things. I'm so proud of her.
Now that sounds great, especially nowadays where everything is digital and creative, and people making money that's busting your behind, killing yourselves like physically, making money on the creative side. So that's definitely a great how. Let's continue on the topic. What was that switch for like you?
Yeah.
Working these jobs and like that's it. I had enough. Let me start a nonprofit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think my it kind of started brewing early on, right? So I started in the as I mentioned earlier, the child welfare sector in New York, and so I did foster care prevention, and then I did some youth development out there. Decided I needed to transition from New York, relocated to Charlotte, and in being in Charlotte, the only position I could get at first was kind of therapy positions, right? And so at the time I was racking up the hours and I was like, nope, I'm not going to get my licensure because I don't, that isn't my desire, right? But then it was like, okay, I had 2 weeks to take this test. I was going to lose all my hours because licensure works different out here. So I said, okay, I'm gonna study, take this test one time. If I don't pass it, then it's over. I don't even care. So I took it the one time, passed it, and I was in that space for a while. But I knew that my passion was young people in creative spaces. And so having done youth development in New York, I knew I wanted to start my own, but New York had a lot of youth development programs. And so that was one of my goals for even relocating to Charlotte. But to back it up a little bit further, with starting Exposure Project is I'm originally from California, so Janelle, she's there right now. And so having been from California, we both went to school in Alabama. I lived in New York, and I work with kids in all these different sectors and would always ask them, what do you want to be when you get older? And I kept hearing either something in the entertainment industry or something in the sports related industry. And so every kid being a basketball player or a rapper was probably not going to happen. So the thought was, how do we bridge some of those youth development gaps by allowing them to have those hands-on experiences and learn about careers? And so thought I'd been there for some time, and then it was like, okay, I can't keep doing both. And I was a foster parent at the time too. Like I had to give up some things, and I decided to go ahead and go full force with Exposure Project.
No, that's great. And as a native New Yorker myself, I totally relate to getting out of New York. It's just there's a lot of great programs, a lot of great organizations, but kind of everything's kind of saturated, and it's kind of like what you're doing and trying to do, and meeting the need and finding the need that is so important. And Charlotte's a beautiful city. You got a lot of colleges and stuff. So what better way to reach the youth and kind of like explore those options. And if college is an option, then there's like a million and one colleges in the Charlotte and surrounding areas and North Carolina as a whole. So it's like kind of like you're planted those seeds for the youngins. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So now you're in California. What I'm like traumatized with all this weather crazy weather that's been happening the last few months out there.
Yeah, I'm in San Diego, so I'm like bottom Southern California, but the weather has been everyone I think has been having like just weird record weather and temperatures everywhere. But yeah, I used to live in Charlotte. I relocated back to California a couple of years ago just to be near family. But as Leanna mentioned, like I went to school in Alabama. Then I went to grad school in Charlotte. So Leanna and I were together. And then I pretty much just started working from there, got my license while I was out there, was doing therapy for a little bit and kind of same thing, just didn't, I knew therapy wasn't like the end all be all for me. But I had made a vow since I started like majoring in social work in college is that I wanted to, at least every position I had, I wanted it to be something that was different, working with a different population or a different type of setting. And so that's just what I want to keep doing, as well as, you know, balancing being a, you know, entrepreneur as well with our brand, I Am Social Work. So.
Yeah, so let's go into the brand, like how did that come about? What is it about? Like how can people, like, if they wanted to get involved, just talk a little bit about the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start us off and then Nell, feel free to jump in. So the brand itself, it is a social work lifestyle brand. I should say lifestyle brand for social workers, right? So for social workers created by social workers. And what that looks like currently is us selling apparel. And just really something that is wearable fashion, but allows a social worker, those that support the profession, to really rep the profession to the fullest degree. And then with that, as we grow, of course, we'll offer different services, but right now we're heavily focused on apparel. But how it even started was that and so we both of our stories kind of aligned together, and I'll let Janelle share her piece in just a moment. But a few years ago, we were part of different social work groups, right? And I think there was one day, and this was part of my story first, just looking for, I think it was like a promote your brand type of Friday thing or something to that effect. And a lot of people were saying like they couldn't really find a lot of social work things, right? And so looking at that, I was like, okay, well, clearly there's some form of need here, because a lot of times some of your social work apparel or certain paraphernalia that's sold can be through third party sites, right? Not actually designed by social workers. And we're starting to see a little bit more social workers come out now and have like their merch and things like that. But at one point it was kind of non-existent. And so the thought was, well, let's really start this brand that is clearly for social workers, right? Like we want to look fashionable. We don't want to look like the social workers on TV that's all like frumpy and they don't have any sense of style. And it's like, oh yeah, they're just, you know, old social workers. They were like, no, we're a new generation. Like we like to be stylish. And so with that, it was okay, let's start this brand. And so I think I had the thought first. Well, I had the thought, maybe I shared the thought first. I think we both had it around the same time. And then I'll let Janelle jump in kind of how our stories aligned, and then we actually launched the brand itself. So go for it now.
Yeah, so one day we were actually just sitting around talking, and I had all like before we even had the conversation, I had been thinking about what are some ways that I can kind of like delve into like entrepreneurship, but within the social work space. I know that this is a profession that I'm called to be in. Any endeavor that I want to do, like I love social work. And so my thought was like, ooh, like I love, like I'm a consumer of a lot of different brands, and I like wearing clothes that have different positive messages on it. Like when you're wearing that clothing, you're embracing what you're wearing. And so my thought was like, oh, what about like selling some t-shirts with therapies, you know, sayings for therapists on it, or, you know, mental health awareness or things like that. And so I was thinking about that. And one day we were sitting around, we were talking, and Leanna had mentioned about seeing that post, as well as wanting to do something in the social work space in terms of creating something, you know, for social workers, because there's a, you know, lack of scarcity of those, you know, dope looking apparel items. And so we basically came up with the concept of I'm Social Work, that we wanted it to be an apparel based company. We wanted it really be heavily focused towards social workers, creating awareness about the profession, not just with our clothing, but like with our messaging, just so that people in the world too can be educated more about social work profession and what, you know, social workers are doing and all the change that is taking place at the hands of social workers. And so that's pretty much how we birthed I Am Social Work, and started developing our products and everything from there.
Yeah, and to just add to that, right? And so with the brand, as we are heavily emphasizing social workers because we go hard for social workers, a big piece of the brand is understanding that social work does not have to look one particular way in a traditional setting, right? Like I remember listening to a podcast and this lady, she was like an art creative and she was doing documentaries and she was a social worker, and or she I think the way she phrased it was like she once was a social worker. So the thought was like, even if you're not operating in the same traditional setting, like you will forever be a social worker, right? Yeah. And to just shed light to that, social workers are not only in like all the spaces that we typically know, but even if you're in an outside of the box type of setting, like you're still a social worker, like, you know, until you die type of situation. So just like really like put in respect on it. I know so many times me and Janelle, like our friends would be like, yeah, don't social work me, like, you know, we're giving them feedback. I'm like, we're not social working, that's just who we are. Like, so that's the heavy on the I am, because we are social workers in every aspects of our life. But yeah.
Absolutely. And you take those values with you everywhere you go. So
I like that. How long that has the brand been out?
We launched October of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I'm actually, I'm wearing one of our shirts. It's our definition tee. So it says our I'm social work definition on it right here.
What does it say? What does it say?
So the definition is a natural born change agent who thinks outside of the box. Yeah, so that's available for purchase on our website.
And one of the things you asked Bass too was, you know, how do you get involved with the brand? And so as we have been, so we launched, as you know, since 2021, we spent about a year planning beforehand. And I think, and you know, we're very much transparent people. And so in planning and implementing it, it was like, okay, like we have this thought, we know what we want it to be. And then as we implemented it or launched it, it was kind of like, okay, is it really doing what we wanted it to, right? Not necessarily, but I think we're in a space now where we are taking a step back to understand that if we're building a brand for a social work community, then we have to get the community involved. And so we're kind of doing some regrouping on what the brand looks like. It's still, the messaging is still the same. It'll forever be I'm social work, but really allowing people to come into the circle to kind of hear their thoughts and their ideas on what they want the brand to be, so we can cultivate it and kind of build it together. So we're going to be starting with an exclusive group to kind of be a part of that tribe as we build and grow this brand.
All right. And we're only 2 social workers. So of course, you know, having the input of the social work community, it being a brand that is created for social workers by social workers, and that input is invaluable. So
definitely.
No, I really, really, really no like that. Um, switching gears a little bit, I wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, there's always something going on in social work, and there's been a lot going on. I want to start with the that damn test, the ASWB, with the finally, you know, given the data of you know, African Americans compared to white social workers, and Latino, Latinx social workers compared to white folks, social workers who, you know, the the disparity, and we already knew that the exam was culturally biased. Anybody that takes the exam would take the exam more than once could kind of like eventually like, you know, kind of put two and two together. What are your thoughts on you know, ASWB finally putting that data out there and talk? You know, if you guys talk to other social workers, what do you guys gather from the field as a whole?
So I'm going to be very honest with myself, and I'll let Janelle jump in, is that I actually am not familiar with the data that is out there. So I don't want to share a perspective that isn't based on facts. And so Neil, I'll let you jump in, but now I am kind of intrigued to go look at it a little bit more.
Yeah. So of course, as you mentioned, Baz, like anyone who takes the exam can pretty much see that it is like culturally biased. And so and that's something that we know, but to see that factual data, it's like, okay, like numbers don't lie type of thing. And of course, any social worker that has tried or that is pursuing licensure or has obtained their license, we know how many like different barriers are kind of in place, such as, you know, having to pass the exam and different states having different legislator and making it hard, to provide services to clients in multiple spaces. And so I'm just happy to see that there are a lot of social workers getting together, rallying, like having discussions about this, first of all, having the conversation to spread that awareness about that, as well as what can we do to actually advocate for ourselves to change some of these barriers that are in place for us at, that legislative level. So I was when the data came out, it's like, okay, it's right here, it's right there, it's in our face, and kind of like, okay, what are we going to do about it now?
Right. And still, I've seen kind of like conflicting things from ASWB. I know for a while they were like doubling down, like to blaming the test taker for like different things, and it's like, what are you guys going to do to fix the actual exam? And like, I know they were talking about just removing one of the answers, which, okay, that like, and allow more time, like if you got to use the bathroom or whatever, like just little things that just completely not solving the issue that that they have. So it's like it's pretty ridiculous. So you're taking all this money that some of us find it very hard to even come up with the almost $300 to take the test. So it's like, so I don't know what do you guys think about that?
I think there needs to be, of course, a lot of restructuring, not just like you mentioned, taking an answer off of a question, but a total reframing of like the entire system at play, honestly. So that's what I would say, total restructuring.
Now I've seen stuff about like just getting rid of the exam, and I've seen mixed results. I've had people like the test, like they want to keep the test. Like many people want to get rid of the test, and I know states like Illinois like got rid of the exam for master's levels. If you got your MSW, you don't have to take the test to get. You just have to like do the hours and take the clinical. Do you guys have any thoughts regarding the actual exam?
Yeah, I would say as I'm like sitting here processing now, like, what would a life without a test look like, right? And I'm like, I'm sure actually bliss in various
less stress,
like less stress of like of having to pass it. But then I'm thinking about, well, what is really the reason for taking this test, right? And so essentially there is some form of like credibility, right? Like you took the test, you have the credentials, and now you're like meant to be this astute social worker to some degree. But in reality, when I think about just my experience in taking the test, I'm like, does that really measure what it is that I really know, right? Because I think about how I even learned to study for the test, right? How you learn like the little tips and tricks and how to answer the question. And when it says this, then you say that. And it's like, okay, is that really capturing what my knowledge is of this profession as a whole? And so when I think about doing away with it, I'm like, okay, I don't think it would be harmful to do away with it. But then I think I think there, aside from the test, there can be other gaps in kind of just how we measure somebody's ability to be an efficient, if we're talking about tests, right, a therapist in some degree. And so I think about like just when it comes to supervision, right, we really don't know like if people are getting good supervision. I now see a lot of times people talking about going into the profession, myself included sometimes, and feeling a little unprepared. Like, yes, I know certain theoretical frameworks, but what does that really mean in this situation? Am I really like relating to this client? Am I really being effective? Do I understand what their diagnosis is, what the treatment plan is? And I think if we was like, okay, forget this test, whatever, like, do we really have things in place to make sure that we have these like effective therapists? And I don't know that from my experience, I can concretely say that systems are in place that allow for that right now.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, no, I agree too. Because I've had supervisors with LMSW or LC, and they're like, "How ya?" I'll be looking at them like, "How you pass the test?" Like I'm like, because this is like not. I've had and I've had great supervision, and I've had terrible supervision. Those times that I've had terrible supervision is like I'm struggling to even finding time to study for a test, and here you are with a license. I'm looking at you like how you like got your license. So it's like, so it is very challenging. But I've also heard the flip side is like, okay, how do we, title protection is a big topic as well in our profession, and people's like, oh, we need the test to keep that kind of title protection, or struggle to find other ways how to we go to grad school, we for our MSW, so we say we social workers, and we have a bunch of people that are in the social service field calling themselves social workers without getting a BSW or MSW. So what's your feelings on title protection?
I would say, I think I was just having a conversation with someone who's not a social worker about this the other day, because as I mentioned earlier, I just started a new position. So I was job searching. So as I was looking for different jobs, of course, some of the keywords I'm typing in for searches is social worker. And I was coming across positions that the title was some type of social worker. But when you were looking at the qualifications, it would say a degree in like in your human services field, whether that was psychology or social work, sociology, something of that sort. And I was having a conversation with this person about how, if that they shouldn't call that position a social worker position, or if they are, then they should be looking for individuals that have degrees in social work. And so I think title protection is very important. I think it's like a catch-22 a little bit with some of the like policies that are in place in terms of like different levels of licensure and things like that, because as Leanna mentioned, like it does give you the credibility in a way. And it's kind of like we need that, because we don't want just anyone that doesn't even have a social work degree calling themselves a social worker, because honestly, it all stems from them having a misconception of what the social work profession is, what a social worker is.
Right.
A lot of people, kind of just put it into like helping people. So if you're helping people in some, way, shape, or form, like you're a social worker, but if you do not have that degree, and then if you, of course, deciding to, pursue it licensure at the master's level, clinical level, independent level, or whatnot, but if you don't have that degree in social work, I just think they shouldn't be putting the position titles as social worker or a person calling themselves a social worker.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. I think I just had a little bit of a mental battle here as I was thinking about like, what do I think about that? That's a good question. So I definitely agree with much of what Janelle has stated. I guess when I think about title protection, what immediately went to my mind was thinking about the title of being a licensed clinical social worker, right? And with that particular title, that is definitely, it's a large sector, but it's one sector of social work, right? There's so out there where a licensure literally doesn't mean absolutely anything, right? But you're still a social worker. But I do understand the difference in like, some of those people that don't have the social work degrees and still consider themselves social workers, when there is a large difference. And so I guess when I think about title protection, I would think the education piece will probably be big enough to suffice, right? Like the bachelor's and master's level to say, okay, they got a BSW. I think the L, again, or the L or the M, whatever, the LCSW is like, this may be an unpopular opinion, but part of that is ego, right? I think it's like part of that is like, yes, I'm an LCSW. It's like, great, you're LCS. I mean, I'm an LCSW, right? Like that's awesome, but not even who cares, because it is important. But it's like that's one part of social work. There's so many parts where you don't really need that, but you still consider yourself a social worker.
Yeah, and especially there's been more and more posts in education about jobs that you could get without a licensure, or just jobs that you could get with just a MSW, and like that education's been out and kind of like more like a forefront. And I've mentioned this on other podcast episodes. Sometimes I feel like we're like in like the beginning stages of like a civil war in social work. Like it's like the schools is like you gotta get your license and you do a private practice, and then now we gotta like everybody is like follow your passion and it's like doing this and like do your pet projects or whatever, whatever crazy whatever idea you had in like during pandemic and you doing it and you're making money off of it, but you're in social work or somehow related to social work, go do that and make money, and then it's like all like you mentioned like all these different ways that using social work skills, using transferable skills, and macro has been like more now than like I think like ever, and I've been like 12 almost 15 years post MSW grad, and I only heard like macro while I was in school, and now they're like macro this, macro that, macro that. So it's kind of like all over the place, and it's like there's more opportunities, related to social work to do different things. And there's no financial social work. There's like sports social work. I wish I heard about sports social work when I was in school, and it's like that's been a big thing too. So it's like it's kind of like there's a gamut of it. There's a lot of education, and people talk about it more. So it's just a lot going on.
Yeah, I've never heard. What is sports social work?
Like I seen like psychologists that seen like social workers work for like different professional teams, like providing like counsel, like therapy, and like just different things related to mental health. Not just professionals, but like in colleges. Like I saw like a LinkedIn post, like a baseball team hired uh, some mental health professionals to be on the team, and you're on the payroll of a major sports team, like, and you providing services to the players and like support staff. So it's like that I see more and more. I know the NASW uh, Miss Joyner did a whole thing on LinkedIn and Facebook Live a couple weeks ago about sports social work. So I know that's been like a big thing too. So it's just a lot that's happening, and is like giving like students more options of what they want to do, and it depends on the state where you at too. Like, and so it's like state like California, there's so many different things, and while I'm living in Delaware, there's either like a rural section, like there is like a little cities, like a couple cities here, and it's like so it's just these states are different, so it's like depending what you want to do.
That's cool. That makes sense. That's cool. Yeah. The interesting ins and outs of social work.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too about going back to my opening about society. Like we just don't remove kids. We just there's more than just like foster care. There's more than just like providing like helping with food stamps or like Medicaid recertifications, or just housing. There's so many different things that we do, and it's like is ever evolving. And now with as technology changes, there's be more things to worry about in terms of like HIPAA too, and but it's also like things like future social work, what it actually can look like in the future.
Right. So many endless possibilities.
Yeah. It's our desire is to show the world that that's how it is, right? Because we still see in movies time and time again that they still put us in this little boxes. Like, enough already. We've seen that. There's so much more to us, and so that is our desire. Is like we want the world to see, like we want the world to put some respect on our name, essentially, and know that we're out here really making change in various forms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We're not like in an office space and with a couch and just like talking about problems, and then we're going home and we got some of us might have our own issues that we deal with, but it's not like it's like you said, it's not how movies or TV shows like portray us. We do like way more than than what meets the eye.
Absolutely. And Bash, you raise a super like valid point, right? Like, yes, we go out career wise or professional wise, we go out and we garner change in in various ways. But at the end of the day, we come home and we have our own things to deal with, right? And so I think it's also shedding light to, like, at the end of the day, we're humans. I guess we are meant to be helpful humans, but we still humans, right? We're not perfect. We still have lives. We still live. We still get stressed out, like, and we want to show that, yes, we are social workers and we are humans as well. Oh yeah.
Which leads to a perfect segue. I know as we record this episode in like the end of March, and like 3 years ago, the world shut down, and apparently local, state, and federal politicians just like not even like mentioning the anniversary of lockdown, and like many people had to like lost loved ones, kind of like between change jobs and like kind of working from home and providing services online and trying to figure out, if you didn't know what Zoom was, like myself, figuring out how to use Zoom, and like, well, what the heck is Zoom? And it's like all these different things. Like how was, and then on top of that, adding Agent Orange doing something every day, and January 6th happened, and then unarmed African Americans continue to be killed, and was even like more and more prevalent because we were all home on lockdown, and like we all seen it on the news or our phones, whatever, and nowadays you like open up an app and you see like violence going on, so it's kind of even like, should we even like use our phones? Like, it's become like the first thing you see on Twitter is like somebody being killed or something crazy happens. So it's like, how was these last like few years been for the both of you?
Yeah. Now I'll let you start first and then I'll jump in.
Yeah. I guess I'll just kind of take it back to, I guess, when lockdown first started. I was working as a home health social worker, so I didn't get to work from home. I still was out visiting patients and even patients who had COVID. So it was a pretty stressful time to navigate, just because, as you know, everyone was going through, we didn't know what COVID was or anything, much information about it. So it was just pretty scary, knowing that I still had to, go into these patients' homes and provide services, but that we were all just trying to figure out what's going on. And so navigating that for a little while, just was stressful as we were, learning news about what was going on. A lot of my patients would have like the news on at their house. So like that was the only time sometimes that I was seeing like what was, going on, with protest and different things like that. I didn't really have much of an opportunity to process a lot of things, honestly, until I had decided in 2021 to relocate. And I took some time just away from working to just kind of collect myself mentally, just because I was pretty much on autopilot for a lot of time, just because I knew I had patients I had to be there for. But of course, being in this field is ever changing, and times there's a lot of challenges, and so I knew that I needed to take time for myself to put myself first, and process kind of like what I was going through as I was trying to help patients and their families navigate the same thing.
Yeah, that's good in terms of processing. Absolutely. I think about it as you kind of preface the question, Baz, in terms of like we're approaching that 3 years, and
Yeah.
kind of acknowledging the anniversary. I'm like, man, I'm a part of that crew that hasn't acknowledged it. Like, it has been 3 years, and I think we don't think about it because, at least in my mind, like there never was an end point, right? It was like, okay, this happened, now we're done, and then you know what, 9/11, it happened that day, and then we know every year in that day or that time period, like we go back to that, where now it's like, is COVID really done? Is it not? Like, we know we're not the same we were 3 years ago, but it's kind of hard to think about like how it's been the last, not hard to think about how it's been the last 3 years, but more so like we just don't think about this is our 3rd-year anniversary. But now now that you posed the question, right? So I'm thinking, what has my 3 years been like? And so for me, starting out when everything happened, I was in a school. I was doing school-based therapy with elementary age kids. And I had just started an exposure project, and we were in a middle school. So I was heavily involved in the school system at the time. So having a transition with little kids to doing therapy on Zoom, it was very difficult. It was very, very difficult. One, because kids were already learning how to get adjusted to remote learning from an academic perspective. And then now you have to come and you have to talk about what's going on in your life and all these different things. And then of course with kids, a lot of therapy is play therapy, right? So how do you get creative in the virtual setting? So it was a whole new world of trying to figure it out. And that was very challenging, but of course looking at it now, I'm like, well, it was challenging, but I made it through. But I think even in that, I like to say the 3 years has been a big transition phase for me. So even in that transition of knowing like, okay, therapy is not my thing and moving to nonprofit thing is, that was a whole nother challenge, right? So like I originally designed Exposure Project to be a hands-on in-person experience. So having to stop or put a hold to it in a school system and then now get these kids to do virtually as an out of school time programming, and they're already doing remote learning, they're like, it was difficult. But I'm very much a creative too, and like how I think, so we're able to kind of manage. But so having put the therapy piece to rest and fully focus on Exposure Project, I would say we are definitely in a different phase than we were when we first started. And so this has been a journey, a roller coaster. There's been some highs, there's been some lows, but it's been a journey nonetheless, and just trying to be present in every part of that journey, even now as we keep going. But yeah, it's been an interesting 3 years. It's been an interesting 3 years.
I think it's like a new normal too. So like you said, it's like, it's not even like, I didn't even necessarily think of it myself. Like it really is the third like anniversary type of thing, because we're moving through it, and you just adjust, and it's like certain things start to become a new normal in a way.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's crazy how people just kind of went back to like before pandemic, like nothing happened, and I see like people, talking to people, especially over the weekend, and people are still struggling a lot, and then not having that acknowledgement. A lot of stuff in terms of Medicaid certifications and like food stamps and kind of all these entitlements and other things, housing courts and different things like that that affect social work if you do that type of work. Kind of going back to pre-pandemic levels, and it's like, okay, people are still struggling, probably even a little bit more now than they were 3 years ago. And it's like now the government is doing all these cutbacks and stuff like that, and that leads to like the social workers doing more work, and we've been, um, beyond burnt out. I would say the the least, and this moral injury, like Kim Young likes to say. Um, and just between burnout and just everything that's been happening. And we were already, a lot of us were already kind of burnt out before pandemic came, and it's like pandemic was here, and now three years later we still burnt out, still tired, and still dealing with like ASWB nonsense and NASW nonsense, and it's like all these different things that's happening in social work. So it's an interesting time that we live in, and now we got worry about banks, falling apart, and
Oh
like
my gosh, yeah.
2008 again. Like now, kind of going through that all over again. So it's an interesting time that we live in. So.
Absolutely. And just as I'm listening to you say that, I would think about like there's always going to be something, right? Like in the next 5 years, next 10 years, there's gonna be something else that we're gonna, we're worrying about to a certain degree. So it's how do we, I think the question is, how do we operate in a space where we know that there's always gonna be something, right? Like from a mental perspective or just our own like self-care perspective, right? I think that's a work that we like to throw out a lot of times, but we don't really kind of dig in deep to what that really looks like. But history shows there's always been something, there's always going to be something. So how do we move in a space where we're still okay in the midst of there always being something? A question I don't have the answer to.
Right. It looks different, but what does that look like? Yeah.
Important to explore and even talk about.
Right.
I think it's a good question to ask yourself too. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, especially where everybody has like their own perspective and like look, I'm in Delaware, you're in Charlotte, and you're in California, and it's like completely different like worlds in terms of states and how the states function and stuff like that. So it's kind of like how it might look at one state or even the city within the state is going to compare totally different to somewhere else. So, but at least the question definitely needs to be asked because, like you're right, there is going to be something else. We don't know what that is, or if it's a thing or a person or what. I say if we survived Agent Orange the last like 4 or 5 years, then I guess we could survive pretty much everything. And you mentioned 9/11 too, and it's like that was a tough time for people, and we the '08 market crashed, and we survived that. So it's always going to be something that's going to affect social work as a whole, and it comes from us individually. It comes from we still look at you know the NASW, whether it be local, state chapters, or the federal chapters to for support and kind of lead, and we have our own people that we gotta like kind of lead to, or sometimes we come up with a solution on our own, and we gotta share those resources and kind of make it work however it works for you as an individual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. As I'm listening to, I'm thinking about like how we're talking about like we've survived all of these things, right? And yes, it's good that we're still here, that we made it through. But I think it's also important for us to like explore like how do we get to a point where we're not only surviving, but like we're thriving in this space, right? Knowing that chaos or whatever in some degree is going to always happen. How do we get to a place where we're thriving in it? And then also from a social work perspective, getting back to the core of why we're originally doing this, right? Like we of course everybody has their own reasons and their own stories of why they got into it, but I don't think anybody said I want to go into social work because I want to burn out and I want to burn out fast and I want to burn out every year, right? There was some reason on why they went into it. So it's how do you get back to that core and allow that to be consistently flowing as you go throughout the years, because you know that it's a tough field. But if we're going to operate in a space of like survival mode, it's like, well, are we really being effective? Are we really being helpful? I think Janelle, we had a conversation before too, is that how do we get back to a place where we are happy that we chose this profession, right? That we take pride in being social workers versus like, yes, I'm doing a great job, but I'm just trying to keep my head above water, And I think again, questions that I don't have the answers to, that I'm trying to figure it out as well. But I think it's important to raise up, because I would hate for us to be 10 years down the line and we're like, man, I'm just still trying to survive this thing. It's just crazy out here, but it's like, it is a lot. I'm making it through, but I am happy, and this is a rewarding field, and I want to keep doing what I'm doing. So a lot of tough questions we got to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's definitely a lot to think about it, and these type of conversations continue need to begin to have. We're starting up kind of conference season within the profession. All these different states doing the conference, and these type of conversations need to be talked about. And I'm glad I'm seeing CEUs being taught like related to COVID and post COVID being offered to social workers. That's a start, and it's kind of what what does this quote unquote post COVID world of social work kind of look like, and the people who we serve and work for, like our clients, like where some of the questions, like how's it been the last 3 years? Like, are you better off? Like how it's like when they ask like doing the polls for like the politicians, like for the president, are you better off like 4 years ago than you were like now? And it's like we gotta ask, like maybe that could be a future like assessment question for clients, is like, are you better off than you were prior to pandemic, or even like a year out and stuff like that? And like I've talk to other talk to school social workers, and they're like, it's even worse now than it was last year. And I was like, I was like, how is that possible? It's like so it depends what you do in the field, and like we mentioned, like the future of social work is there's so many different things that's kind of taking place, that's happening, and with technology, who knows, we're gonna be like avatars and providing like services to clients. Like who knows?
That's gonna be crazy. I think the important part of that too, listening again, is just like, what does the support for the supporters look like, right? Like I know having when I was in the doing therapy in elementary school side to school based, but I wasn't working in the school system. I was working for a community based agency. And so a lot of time I was sitting in meetings and I didn't have that same type of like school system buy, not even buy-in, but things they had to go through because I didn't work for the school system. But I'm just sitting here like, man, everybody, like these are the supporters for the community, for the kids, and they all need tremendous support and they're not getting it, right? So we talk about like burnout and talk about these different things of the state of the social work profession. It's like, who's supporting the supporters? And if that's not existing, then how do we put those things in place? Because it's going to always be taxing and we're going to always need that support. But what does that look like? And how do we actually make sure that that becomes something that can live and be helpful?
Yeah, but which is why I kind of started my own company and providing that self-care and using my monthly Zumba classes and having my poetry book out as a way to like, hey, like this is my story, this is what I went through, like at least the first year and change of COVID, and it's like those stories need to be talked about and shared. Like this is like reality of kind of like what we go through too. Like yes, we have our own lives and we deal with it, and we still gotta like work and provide service, but we go through our own stuff as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Zumba and poetry, that's a good outlet.
Yeah.
Good. So what's next for the brand? What's next for the two of you as individuals?
Yeah, so I would say for the brand, as mentioned earlier, kind of right, is we're at that space of taking that step back, right, and really tapping into the social work community to be a part of the brand building process. And then of course just growth, right? We want to be a staple. How we look at certain brands and Nike and Champion, all these things is like, oh, I'm social workers right up there with them, and we've heard of the social. So definitely want to be a staple name. We know we're gonna, we manifest in that. Take some time to get there. But for the brand, that's definitely our goal. Individually for me, I think really just continue to ask myself tough questions, right? In terms of like how I exist in this space. And then on a professional level, just building out exposure project. Like I have dreams I'm a dreamer, I'm a visionary. So I have dreams for that as well. So building out those things and finding time for myself in the process.
Yeah. For like Leanna said, for I'm social work, just continuing to collaborate, continue to grow. Like we want to be a household name for social workers. We want to be like that first go-to thought, when you think about like a lifestyle brand for social workers. And for myself, I would say I'm just, like I said, continuing to grow in the field of social work. I haven't been out. I'm not even 4 years post my master's degree yet. So I still feel like there's just so much. I'm still really eager to just explore different areas of the field. I know I just started a new position, but I have an interest. When you were talking about sports social work, another area of social work that a lot of people don't or may not know about is veterinary social work. And so I'm a pet lover. I love animals. And there's a lot of veterinary hospitals and veterinary agencies that actually employ social workers to provide that like social and emotional support for like families who may like have lost a pet or a pet that's sick or maybe is has some type of medical diagnosis and the prognosis isn't looking too good, and also to be a support for the veterinary staff. And so that's actually an avenue I plan on exploring in the future too, is bridging kind of like my two passions in a way, or two things that I really do care about.
I like that. Actually, I have heard of veterinary social work, so it's like it was kind of fascinating. Kind of really see how that blossoms and move forward, and hopefully that gets some traction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only like a few schools that offer like certificates you can get, like postgraduate like certificates in that area, but it is a need. I mean, we may not think about, kind of like what people go through when they experience a loss of a pet. That to a lot of people, their pet is a family member, it is a loved one. And so they do need that bereavement support as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially like we've seen like not natural disasters, and then you see like these pets just like wandering around like
Yeah.
without homes, and they survive the natural disasters, and it's kind of like all these pets being lost, and so it's definitely a strong need in that realm related to the space.
Mhm.
Where can people find you?
Go
We
ahead,
are
Nyadra.
on, we're on Instagram. You can find us at iam.socialwork. Facebook, you can look us up, I Am Social Work. And our website is iamsocialwork.co.
Yep, what she said.
Awesome, ladies. It was a pleasure having you on. Keep up, the great work. Stay safe, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having us. We appreciate you.
Yes.